This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, a licensed marriage and family therapist and a soul-led leadership coach to women in midlife who are wanting more meaning in the second half. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Now here is today's episode. Episode 138. Do you have a loud inner critic? You know, that voice inside your head that is nonstop and beats you up because you mess up or things aren't perfect or tells you not to assert yourself and ask for what you need? You're not alone. There are many women in midlife who struggle with this. But if you head over to today's show notes, you can download your own guide in turning your inner critic into your inner guide in 4 steps. Now here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. Hey, before I dive into today's episodes talking about overfunctioning, codependency, and why your energy is all drained and you're trying to control everything else but yourself, before I dive into that, I want to give you a heads up about my new group coaching program that I'm hoping to get started over the next couple months. If you want to be on the notification email list, head over to podcast@NicoleBurgessCoaching.com if you're not already on my weekly newsletter. And then I'm going to start segmenting off those who are interested in it, so you're not getting bombarded with a ton of different emails about my upcoming program. I'm going to keep the first round pretty small, I think under 12 women, and it's a 12-week group coaching program, and it'll last over 3 months, and there's going to be handouts and videos and things that you're going to go through so that you can get really clear as a woman who's in midlife and you're not feeling so fulfilled or constantly like stressed out and you're wondering like, my gosh, on the outside, I look like I have it all together. I've got the family, I've got the house, I've got the job, or I've got this great business, and yet just kind of, just not feeling it. And we're going to walk through some ways that you can discover kind of like where in your life you want to work on or what the areas are you want to work on. And then I'm going to take you through the different energy centers to unpack any fears that may be still holding you back in your life so that you can be more soul-led and listen to your intuition. So again, you can head over to podcast@NicoleBurgessCoaching.com. Email me at that email list, or if you're already on the newsletter list, hit reply to the latest email that I sent out this week, and then just let me know and I'll put you on the list. All right, we're going to dive in now to today's episode, and this is a topic I seem to have, multiple times a week with the clients that I work with. Harriet Lerner had coined the term overfunctioning or underfunctioning, and it really does describe folks who struggle with codependent behaviors. If you are familiar with Melody Beattie, she wrote the book Codependent No More: How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself. She gave kind of the history where the term codependent came from. And she defined it as, quote, a codependent person is one who has let another person's behavior affect him or her, and who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior. Another definition she gave in the book was by Robert Schuby, and he wrote, codependency is an emotional, psychological, and behavioral condition that develops as a result of an individual's prolonged exposure to and practice of a set of oppressive rules which prevent the open expression of feeling as well as the direct discussion of personal and interpersonal problems. So oftentimes codependency or overfunctioning behaviors has often been associated with if you were raised in a family where alcohol or addictions were an issue, or like gambling was an issue, compulsive behavior was an issue. And I'm going to say for a lot of my clients that I've worked with over all these years, both clinically and in coaching, what I find is there is often there's narcissism that's in the family. And if you were young and you're taking care of your parents, needs. You were taking care of the financial well-being of the family because there was either severe mental health issues or addiction issues. That really starts at a young age, that self-preservation, right? And where you're not allowed to express your own emotions. You're not allowed to state your own needs. And people in general become like, can you really trust them? Can you really trust yourself? If you remember, I did a series on perfectionism. That's back in episode 72, and then episode 73, then episode 74. Perfectionism and people-pleasing also really fit right into codependency. So let's say you had a very over-anxious parent, and it can be a mom or a dad, and they were trying to control everything that was going on outside of themselves, everything within the family, everything that was going on, everywhere else, and they weren't able to just kind of live with the messiness or live in the unknown. That means oftentimes then you were attempting to try and help them or taking care of them. If they had bouts of major depression, can't get out of bed, things like that, you may have started taking care of them. Again, if you grew up with a parent or parents who had alcohol or substance addiction issues, again, oftentimes like not knowing where maybe your food is going to come from, where money was coming from, how you're going to pay for rent or a mortgage, things like that. All of those things can really, as you become an adult, still play havoc within your relationships, still play havoc in your belief systems in thinking, oh, I've got to be more, do more. Oftentimes those who struggle with codependency or trying to control other people, they have a low self-esteem. And I get a lot of these things because I've told you before, right? I'm a recovering perfectionist. I also know I grew up with a parent who wanted to control a lot of things. And so it was very much about making sure they were okay often. And what that can look like is if you think about in your relationships, think about whether it's your professional relationships, your personal relationships, codependent behaviors really look like you can feel bored or empty or worthless if you don't have a crisis in your life. You're trying to solve a problem for somebody or trying to help somebody. You're trying to anticipate other people's needs. You feel compelled, almost, forced to help that person solve a problem, often giving unwanted advice, giving rapid fire series of suggestions, or trying to fix other people's feelings. You often overcommit yourself. I know we've talked quite a bit about, being able to say no without guilt. Well, when you're in that kind of codependency, you often don't know who you are. And so you're trying to, I call it you jump the fence or you jump your lane. You may often feel, pressured and like you can't seem to get things under control. If you have low self-esteem or low self-worth, you take a lot of things personally. You fear that rejection. You feel like you're a victim. You often are afraid of making mistakes. Again, that really goes back to a lot of that perfectionist thinking as well. You reject compliments or praise. You may think that you're different than the rest of the world. You often think that you're not good enough. You can get angry, defensive, self-righteous, and indignant when others blame and criticize you, or you often do it to yourself. You try and help other people live their lives instead of your own. You think and talk a lot about other people. You check on other people often, again, at the risk of not even caring for yourself. You wonder why you never have any energy or wonder why you can't get things done. You don't pay attention to or acknowledge your own wants or needs. You believe other people couldn't possibly like or even love you. You continue to try to prove you're good enough for other people. You believe you don't deserve good things and happiness. Melanie Beattie has a huge list within her book that I think would be helpful if you struggle with perfectionism, if you struggle with people pleasing, if you grew up in a family where, again, your needs, your wants were often stifled, were repressed, were not acknowledged. You weren't really supported in a sense growing up. And oftentimes, again, codependency is you don't feel seen or heard. You feel like you've got fear of you're going to lose control. You try to control events and people through helplessness, guilt, coercion, threats, advice giving, manipulation, or domination. You often get frustrated and angry. You may even get just truly confused or depressed or sick because, again, you're not taking care of yourself. You become workaholics. You spend money compulsively. You lie to yourself. I call that the self-betrayal work that can happen. You feel terribly threatened by the loss of anything or person they think provides for their happiness. Again, that external locus of control versus internal locus of control. Maybe you equate love with pain. You feel that you need people more than they need you or want you. You've got to prove yourself that you're good enough to be loved. You stay in relationships that don't work or are toxic. You don't say what you mean or mean what you say. Again, you've lost the word no in your vocabulary. You say everything is your fault or nothing is your fault. It's kind of those two extremes. You have a difficult time asserting your own rights. You may even struggle if you don't have really good boundaries. And this is another classic sign, which I'll talk about in a second on action steps. If you don't have good boundaries, you often tolerate inappropriate behaviors from others, where you gradually increase your own tolerance until you can tolerate and do things that you said you'd never ever would. Wonder why you hurt so badly. You don't trust yourself. You don't trust your feelings, your decisions. You don't trust other people. You may think that you are being controlled or you feel you're controlled by other people's anger. You repress your own angry feelings. I remember in one of the episodes, I talked about allowing your anger motivate you to make changes. It's not about repressing it or acting it out, but allow it to move you forward. Maybe you've been shamed for feeling angry versus, it's a normal behavior, or it's a normal feeling. And yet somehow in your family, you weren't allowed to feel that. So now as an adult, it's kind of like, oh, I'm not supposed to share that or be that, or especially as a woman, I'm not allowed to be angry. Codependency, it often looks like, you're taking care of everybody else but yourself. Codependents tend to be extremely responsible, or they can be really irresponsible. Sometimes they become martyrs, sacrificing their happiness and that of others for causes that don't really actually require sacrifice. Find it difficult to have fun and be spontaneous. You may laugh when you feel like crying. You vacillate in your decisions and emotions. You may cover up and lie and protect the problem. So all these things, again, everybody I think can do some of these behaviors, but if that becomes the consistency in your life, it's remembering you are an intelligent, bright, resourceful woman, and you can make these changes. I remember years ago, I had a really good friend of mine, and her husband had a serious health issue, and he wasn't going to the doctors. He wasn't taking care of himself, and she kept saying, oh my gosh, I'm nagging him all the time and telling him, I'll call the doctors and I'll do this. And finally, I was having a conversation with her, and I said, but it's his health. It's his responsibility to take care of that. I get you are worried about losing him. You're worried about losing him as a husband, as a dad, as your partner, that he'll die sooner if he doesn't take care of himself. But the reality is, I'm like, you can't make him take care of himself. And it took her a little bit to begin to have those discussions with him before she finally accepted it. It's like, yeah, I don't have the ability to make him go to the doctor or to eat healthy or to take care of his body, to really work with what the illness was. So even maybe reverse it. And when she started to understand that she was feeling out of control because she didn't have control over him or what he was doing, she started to release that and got more settled into just being able to say what she wanted and needed from him and what she wanted in their marriage. I know of other people where family members would intentionally create chaos, right? And that's that codependency. If one family member was growing and changing and becoming healthier, right? Their well-being was doing better. They were succeeding. Maybe it's, in their relationships or financially or with their health. A family member who was notorious would get, start to create chaos, create actual drama within the family, trying to suck that person back in. And they had to really learn, the person had to learn, it's like, oh, I'm an adult. And, I can observe what they're going through and I can say that really is hard, what you're going through, yet I don't have to do anything with it. It's not my responsibility to take care of that. And we call it the drama triangle when there's a persecutor, a martyr, and a victim kind of role playing that goes on in families, when that is often the case where there's codependency going on. So remember, you don't have to keep playing that same way as an adult. You can totally do it differently. Another example of what codependency can look like in relationship is if you're in a relationship, like a friendship or an intimate relationship where you stay in it when you know there's truly no reciprocity in how that person feels for you. Like there's no depth, there's no love that you get. They really don't love you. And it's clear because there's just an emotional void or they're truly toxic, and yet you choose to stay in that. And it's like you keep getting what it is you don't want. You want to feel loved, but you're with somebody who actually doesn't love you, doesn't care for you. And so it's remembering it's like, oh, that's right. I'm an adult. I get to say no. I can do this differently. I can actually have happiness in my life and not wait for somebody to bring it to me. If you think about how codependency can impact your professional life, let me take it back to like perfectionism and people pleasing, right? Because that can really be part of codependency behaviors. We talked about with perfectionism, you can become a workaholic, right? Because you are so worried about what other people think of you. Again, if you've got a low self-worth, even though, let's say you've climbed up the ranks, and you're like, no, I've got this, or you've built your own business. If that self-worth or that belief in yourself is not strong, healthy, it doesn't take too much to knock you off center. And if you grew up like you had to be the perfect daughter or get the best grades, right? Follow that good girl kind of persona, which I've talked about before, you can get locked into that as a leader. And when that happens, you're still working more hours, maybe worried about delegating or wondering why people don't recognize you for all that you do for them. And the fact of the matter is, it's learning how to trust in the people that work for you or trust in the people that you're hiring to help you, with your business, and knowing that you don't have to do it all and mistakes will happen and you will need to forgive yourself of those mistakes. It's leaning into those fears, and so that it's like, oh my gosh, I've done bigger things than this and been okay, because you will. You'll make it through this, whatever it is that you're going through. It's a moment in time. It's not a forever. Let me share some ideas. And again, these are things that we've talked about in previous podcast episodes, whether it's been solo episodes or with some of my guests. Remember, you are a very resourceful, intelligent, amazing woman. It is totally okay for you to, one, get quiet and understand what is it that you're feeling, what is it that you want, so that you can assert yourself in any of the relationship that you're in, whether it's a personal relationship, meaning family member, a friend, a sibling, or that you want to have in, working relationships, and how you assert yourself as an employer, as an employee. Begin to state what it is that you need. It can be as simple as, this is what I need or want from you. Start there. Make sure that you are telling the truth, that what you say is what you mean. Lying about how you feel, think, or what you want is not being polite. It's just lying. And that doesn't help the other people in your life. They can't get to know you or know what you want unless you're telling them the truth. I get it sounds really scary, but the more you do this, then your confidence goes up, your self-worth, self-esteem goes up. Remember that you do not have to be controlled by what other people say or do, nor do you control other people by your words. Remember, you're a separate being from other people. You're responsible to people and how you conduct yourself. You're not responsible for people. I know I've said that many times on the podcast. Another thing is to really remember to take care of you. That's why I often ask my guests, like, what's their self-care, procedures, techniques, things that they do? Because if you have a family member, a loved one who says, well, that's being selfish, or how dare you, or, why, you don't love me. It's like, no, I love you and I love myself too. And this is when I take care of me, I'm more able to be there for you and for others. But this is what I need to do to take care of myself. You can show compassion and concern without rescuing others. Again, like I said earlier, you can reflect back to the person if they're telling you about a problem. Say, wow, sounds like you are having a problem. What do you need from me? And if they say nothing, I'm just wanting here to, just to vent, that's fine. Often that's all it is. Most of the time when people are talking about problems, they just want to vent. That's really true for many women. So we want to vent versus having somebody like problem solve it for us. And it can feel very invalidating and dismissive if we're like, oh, well, all you need to do is this, 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 and this. And I'm like rolling off with the brainstorming and idea giving and advice giving when that's not what they're even asking for. You can also share your feelings and problems without expecting others to rescue you. Again, not their job. If you want them to help you maybe problem solve something, then ask them that. Hey, I would love to hear your ideas of what I could do on something like this, or, love to brainstorm something like this with you. Would you be open to that? Now you've got you can help ask, you're telling them what it is that you're needing from them, and they have the right to say no as well. One of the other things that you need to remember is to really accept what is going on in the moment. It's not uncommon for codependency to not accept the moment. Like when things are going good, things are going good, right? Everybody is like, oh yeah, life is really easy. Life is good. But if things start to break, things start to not work, things start to go wrong, it's a momentary thing. It's not a forever. And if we don't accept that there's a problem, and then that builds up, it's like literally stuffing your feelings down like, oh no, it's all good. It's all good. And yet it's not. Share what's not working, like the dishwasher broke, or, the car didn't start, or I had the flat tire and oh, it really sucked. And, I called AAA, or I called a friend to help out, or, I figured out what I needed to do. And it's like, celebrate that then. Remember, you're an amazing woman. And if you have been losing energy, or you're feeling resentment often, or you're feeling angry often, that's also often a sign of you aren't putting up boundaries where there need to be boundaries, meaning you aren't using limits. Now, you can go back to episode 12, where Sharon Martin and I talk about boundaries. Episode 51, I'm talking about, are you looking for permission? Some of those earlier episodes, interviews, I'll give you examples of what a boundary is or what it means to set it. No one else can do that work for you. And when you begin to take those inspired action steps, again, like I said before, that confidence will grow, that momentum will grow. I get it can feel really weird or scary when you first do that. But it's no longer allowing the fears, again, perfectionism, people-pleasing, the codependency, all of those things to run you. That's still living as if, it's self-preservation. Like you're still this young kid trying to make it, with your parents. And it's not true. You're this adult woman who has the right to say no, who can say no, who has the right to say, I'm going to live my best life. It doesn't mean I don't care about others. I can care, and I'm not here to rescue anybody, because that is not your job. That's not why you were put on this planet. When you're paying attention to what comes from within you and you're trusting your inner wisdom, that voice coming from that's the soul whispers, then you get out of the rut of constantly paying attention to everybody else and reacting all over the place, or not reacting at all, meaning needing to take a step and you're like, yeah, no, totally not going to do it because you don't want to face that there's an issue or a problem going on, that maybe somebody is constantly treading over your boundaries, and instead of you addressing it, you let it go. And so then your resentment grows, and then you wonder why you're feeling so depleted. It becomes a vicious circle. So based on today's episode, I want you to get really curious. Where do you feel like you are out of control in your life? Explore who is it you often try to control, or what events do you try to control versus letting things unfold or letting people do what they need to do for themselves. What's one action step you can begin this week to change that? And if you need to, write down if any of those codependency behaviors that I shared earlier listed off, write down which ones spoke to you. And again, where in your life do they come out the most, so that you can begin to take an action step to change that. All right, ladies, just once again, if you are interested or curious about my upcoming group coaching program in the next couple months, head over to the show notes and you will be able to sign up either for the Turn Your Inner Critic into Your Inner Coach, or just truly send me an email at podcast@NicoleBurgessCoaching.com. And until next time, take care. Thank you for listening. And remember, if you have a loud inner critic, one that tells you you're not enough or you can't do something, head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com and download your Turn Your Inner Critic into Your Inner Guide in 4 steps.